Welcome to the Business Rebellion, the podcast for founders and leaders who know something about the way business is done doesn't sit right anymore. Not because they're failing, but because the model is broken. This is a space where we talk about doing business differently, with better standards, better design, and support that actually works. Today's episode is for anyone who feels a knot in their stomach when they think about their numbers. Not because they don't care, but because they've been taught to associate finance with pressure, judgment, or shame. This is Numbers Without Fear. My guest today is Sarah Petty. Sarah is an ex-corporate finance leader, a qualified CPA, and the founder of Olive Business Partners, a virtual CFO firm that brings CFO-level thinking to small business owners. Sarah has worked with businesses at every stage of growth, from early startups through to multi-billion-dollar global organisations. And what I really respect about her work is that she doesn't treat numbers as something to fear or something only finance people should understand. Sarah makes finance practical, commercial, and human. She's deeply grounded in the belief that if you're running the business, you should be paid like the CEO, not left carrying all the risk without the reward. This conversation is about clarity, not complexity, and about how understanding your numbers can actually create relief, not more pressure. Sarah, welcome to the Business Rebellion.
Thank you. Nailed that intro. I love it. I was nodding throughout at your part and then at my own.
Awesome. I'm so glad you're here. And to start us off, for people who don't know you yet, what kind of businesses usually come to you right before numbers start to feel overwhelming or avoided?
Well, if I'm really honest, business come to us once it is overwhelming and avoided. Look, in a perfect situation, a business is coming to us when they're starting to feel that little bit of loss of control of what's going on, and there's that bit of fear in their stomach and they feel like they want to grow the business but they're not sure where to go. Yes, that would be ideal timing when you can engage a CFO and we can start growing. In reality, as business owners, we are wearing so many hats, we have so much on our plate, and often it's not lack of trying, but you will drop a ball somewhere. And so it often is some sort of problem that's happened that makes a business owner reach out and say, oh, I need some help with my finances. And look, that's totally fine because, we are the experts in this space. So we will come in and firstly deal with whatever problem has happened, get them back on track, and then we will start their journey to grow the business. So if you come that little bit earlier, we can start the growth plans earlier. But in a perfect world, that doesn't always happen. So yes, we can help you out if you do run into a financial issue. I think in terms of what stage, generally the businesses that are working with us, they've been around for a couple of years. They've established the business. They've got a established offer or product or service. We work with both types, and it's working to some degree. But it's starting to grow and they're just still kind of winging it from a financial perspective. And as you grow, you can sort of wing it for so long, but then decisions start to get a bit scarier. The numbers you're talking about are much bigger. The risk is going to be much bigger as you grow your business too. And so that's sort of the stage that businesses will come to us. Now, very generally, that's often around sort of turning over $1 million. Some business owners will think about that earlier. Some run, on for a little while and then come to us at a bit later stage. But if that's sort of the very first time that you're thinking about a CFO, that's the kind of feeling that business owners are having. It's just that they don't want to wing it anymore. It's getting scary to wing it, and they're ready for some strategic advice.
No more cowboy financing.
Yes.
And so from what you see, what's the most common thing founders misunderstand about their own finances?
I think the most common issue we see is that everyone chases revenue and think that will fix all the problems. Now, I'm not saying, revenue is a key metric in your business and you do need consistent revenue to keep growing your business and to make it sustainable ongoing, but it's not the one metric to chase. And you see so much of this on social media of, I'm now $1 million business, I'm now a 7-figure, 8-figure business. and you sort of feel like, oh God, I'm so behind, I'm not reaching all of these numbers. But the real question is how much of that is actually translating into profit. And, we see behind the scenes of businesses of all sizes. We're working with, the $1 million businesses through to multi-million, tens of $1 million businesses. And I can tell you there are still some earning multi-millions that are not making a cent at profit. So for all that effort that you're putting in to bring in millions of dollars of revenue, there's nothing going into your bank account. And that's a major structure issue in the business. And so I think that's the one thing, if anything, business owners misunderstand is that they keep chasing revenue, but then question, why aren't I making any profit? Why do I still not have cash in the bank? Why am I still struggling to pay my bills every month, no matter how big
Themselves.
they're getting and what they're chasing?
Yeah. Yeah. So something I see a lot of very capable business owners, right? They obviously avoid their numbers, not because they don't care, but because it feels really heavy, right?
Yes.
And why do you think so many smart driven founders avoid looking at their finances?
I think it's two things, a lack of understanding, because not many founders go into business with a finance degree. I'm one of the rare ones, but that's the purpose of my business. So it's a lack of understanding. They just haven't been taught that. It's not, I've had 20 years experience, so you can't gain that quickly. But I think it's also a fear of the uncertainty. That's the other part. Once you start to look at the numbers, it might show you something that doesn't look so good. And if you don't know the next step of what to do about it, that's where it can get really scary. So it's best just to, avoid it, look away, and not think about it. I think the uncertainty is often the thing that holds people back from really leaning into their financials.
And quite, I find it's a lot, sometimes a bit of shame
Yeah,
around,
yeah,
because when you go into business, people expect you to know all of those things.
yeah,
You should know all those things, but they never sit us down in school and teach us business finance,
no,
right? So you kind of just learning as you go and you're hoping for the best and you're running with an accountant who, you hope tells you the right things, but obviously their purpose is tax related, so they're not
yeah,
there to advise you specifically.
yeah,
So you just kind of, white knuckle it and kind of hope
yeah.
for the best and you don't even know what good looks like, right?
Yeah, exactly. I think that's a lot of aspects of business. I mean, finance is my background, but when I went into business, it was things like, what technology do I use? How the hell do I actually make social media effective? What's a sales process look like? And you don't want to always admit that, oh, I don't know what I'm doing here. And so yeah, for others it's finance. I think everyone's got their area that they're not so strong at. That's just we can't be good at everything. So it does it does bring up that bit of shame as a business owner, but it really shouldn't be that way because you can't wear all the hats and be an expert wearing all of the hats. So yeah, I think we've all got the areas that we need help with.
You can't wear them forever, right? You've eventually
That's
got to
it.
pass them off to the specialists.
Yeah, take off the hats, man. You've got to do it quickly.
Get the hat rack, buy it, put it in the corner, put them all on there, give them to someone else. So I'd love to talk about the difference between looking at numbers and actually having financial visibility. And what does CFO level thinking really mean, especially for small business owners?
Yeah, I love this question about the financial visibility versus just looking at your numbers. I think there are some business owners who will look at their numbers, whether that's a quick check of zero or look in their bank account, and that is giving you a one point in time of where your numbers are. And it is better than not looking at them at all. So this is not to shame those people at all. That's great. But I think true visibility is about being able to look forward. That's where you get the real insight. And what we're doing as CFOs, you mentioned working with an accountant previously. An accountant is great at what they do, but they specialize in taxes, compliance, and helping you look backwards and make sure that everything you're filing is compliant, reconciles, all of that. But they're not really looking forward, they're looking backwards. But what we're doing is helping you look forward. So real financial visibility is about seeing your numbers today knowing what that means for the future and what decisions that you need to make and when you need to make them. So, as we were talking earlier, when people are avoiding that uncertainty, it's because they're not looking at their numbers because they're worried what it might show. But when you have visibility, even if it shows that it's not working today, you can look into the future and think about, okay, I know I need to make this decision to make that work, or I need to pivot something here, or if this happens, I need to do this. And that's where having that real visibility and much more clarity helps you to drive your business, because you're no longer just winging it and guessing. You've got a plan for all the scenarios, and nothing will ever go exactly to plan. So I'm not saying, we are fortune tellers and we know exactly what's going to happen in your market and what your clients will do, and nothing ever goes to plan, but what triggers a decision. So when something happens or a certain metric isn't performing, then you've got options that you deal with. That's how we work with business owners.
Yeah, I love that. I love the different, like those key points and those triggers for when you can make those decisions. Because quite often, a lot of business owners will talk about, oh, when can I hire the next person, right? And that's something that you need to consider, but you can't do that unless you've got enough profit. So, those things all tie in together to be able to make those decisions to make sure you can afford to do the expansion that you're dreaming of, right?
Yeah, 100%. And it's, a lot of decisions in the early days are just gut feel. And I'm not one to say, gut feel sometimes needs to play into it, and you do need to go out on a limb as a business owner and take a bit of a risk. So this isn't to say that stop taking any risks whatsoever, but you can take much more calculated risks because you've got some data behind it and you know what to do if something goes wrong.
That's awesome. That kind of clarity and the kind of like the plan Bs
Yeah.
that come with that
Yes,
is
I love a
something
plan
really
B.
valuable. Yeah, lots B, C, D, E. Um,
Yeah.
and so why is the bank balance such a misleading comfort metric for so many founders?
Yeah, it's funny. So many business owners I talk to, that's what they think financial management is. I've checked my bank account today. I see if I've got enough cash to pay what I'm owing, and then I pay it today, or otherwise I wait till tomorrow. But if you're managing your business that way, the cash that's in your bank is one point in time. It is not telling you the whole story. And so you might have a lot of cash in your bank today, but you've actually got a huge bill due in a week's time. So timing is really crucial. It's also telling you, again, a point in time. It's not telling you what could be coming in the future. It's not telling you if your clients are paying you late, and therefore, that's a reason that you don't have cash in your bank. You're just purely looking at one point in time today, and that's it. It's not telling you much. Now, it is worth looking at your bank balance regularly, but alongside a whole range of other financial metrics in your business to tell you the whole picture. It's just one small piece. It's not going to help you manage your business, and it definitely won't help you to grow because you're just managing day to day, hand to mouth, rather than looking forward.
Absolutely. So one of the things that I love about your approach is that you use numbers as a way to design better business, not just report on what already happened, which is what we're kind of talking about. And how can numbers actually help founders design a business that works better for them?
I think it's giving them actual data to work with. And it is that balance between having gut feel and data. Because great founders, they can see an opportunity coming, they get a feeling about it, and that's really great. A lot of people don't have that and can't see that way. But what you want to do is then go, okay, got this great idea. I think there's a potential opportunity here. Let me check the data and see if this stacks up, and then you can put together your plan B and C for if something does go wrong. Just having the numbers also gives that bit more certainty because you've got a next step. So you can look at it and it might not look great today, but that actually doesn't matter because you've got a next step to take from there. I think when that causes a lot of stress is when you have no next step. So things look bad today and you don't have a next step. You don't know what to do next. So it just gives business owners something to work with. And, if you're truly the leader in your business and the CEO of your business, you need to be across the basics. You don't have to be accountant level, understanding of finance, but you do need to know the basics if you want to grow the business. It's just part of business, and it will help you make much better, more informed decisions.
You mentioned a little bit about the stress. So, what kind of patterns do you see in the numbers before burnout or cash stress actually shows up?
Yeah, there's a couple of things. There's often very early warning signs. I mean, one, when we were talking about checking the bank balance, if you're feeling that you're checking it every day just to see if you can pay a bill, that's a red flag that there's an issue in your business. You should check it to just see where you're at and make sure things are working properly. But if it's to check whether I can pay a bill or not today, there's something that you need to be fixing in your business. I think the other thing is if you're constantly stressed as an owner and you've got that feeling in your stomach or you're not able to sleep at night, just thinking of that next bill that's coming, not able to pay payroll, or you've got a big supplier bill coming up, those can also be red flags. Even if you're able to scrounge enough money together to pay it, but if you're having that constant sort of worry in the back of your mind, that can be a red flag as well. And the other thing I would say, that if you have payment terms in your business, or payment plans, and people are defaulting on that or not paying on time, your customers are not paying on time regularly, and you're having to chase payments nonstop, again, another red flag. And you need to think about how you can tighten that up, because just kind of letting it go. I've seen this in businesses where, a client's late paying and they'll say, oh, we have a good relationship, so I'll let it go this time. And then it happens again next month. And they're like, oh, I'm sure it's just something going on in the business, let it go. And next time. And it just, they extend it out, becomes months without paying, and they've got a huge issue, and they've done the work and they're not getting paid for it. And, look, 9 times out of 10, a quick reminder to a client to say, have you paid your invoice? There's usually just oh, it slipped my mind, or sorry, it's in the queue, or and they'll get it done. But yeah, if you're not chasing that, you're not on top of it, and you're seeing regularly your clients are not paying you on time, then you've also got a cash issue.
Absolutely. That's probably one of the biggest things that I think, can crush a business, that whole cash flow with invoice and payments. It's
Yeah, and maybe just the other point to mention there, Kerrie, is there's often a real timing issue between when you're receiving money from your customers and when you're having to pay your bills, that people don't think about. We call that the cash cycle. So if, for example, I have a customer and I invoice them, they have 30 days to pay me. So I invoice them today, but they're not going to pay me till next month. But with my suppliers that I'm using, I have to pay them immediately. So they send me the invoice, I have to pay them immediately. That means I'm waiting 30 days for cash to come in, but I'm having to pay out cash straight away. That is a complete mismatch in your cash cycle. In an ideal situation, you want your cash coming in earlier and your cash going out later. But, the best management is to try have them around the same timing. So just something to be conscious of, because, there's a lot of suppliers, particularly if you're using lots of technology and that kind of thing, they just bill you straight away. They, direct debit or charge your credit card every month. And if you're giving long extended payment terms to your customers, you're not going to have money to pay your expenses.
I've seen it, especially in the trade industry, that's quite common to have long payment terms.
Yeah, if you're buying materials and things, that can often be, you have to buy that in advance before you're getting any payment from customers.
Yeah, and then they could be 45, 60 days, which is a long time in
Exactly.
payment
Yeah.
terms.
Yeah.
I've seen it a lot in some of the trade services that we've been in, that
Yeah.
though they just really, that cash flow, because of those two things, just really cause massive issues.
Yeah. And it comes back to planning. If you're thinking a bit further ahead, you kind of know when you have to make your payments for certain things. So you want to make sure you're collecting enough cash before that to be able to pay for it.
So there's other things that we always have a look at as well when it comes to numbers, and that's, capacity versus revenue and margins versus effort, and, there's pricing misalignment or team cost versus value. So what kind of insight and um, advice can you give around looking at those kind of things in your business?
I think there's a couple of main ones. I mean, there's lots that you can look at, and depending on your business industry, where you're at, what size, all of that, the metrics will be different. One area that I consistently see as an issue for businesses is pricing, and that is underpricing and not re-looking or reviewing their pricing regularly. So a lot of businesses kind of set and forget pricing, and I'll talk to business owners and they'll say they haven't reviewed their pricing in 4 or 5 years. So your expenses are probably going up during that time with the inflation. You've probably increased the value that you're providing because your service would have improved with your experience and knowledge and efficiencies, and yet you're still charging the price from 5 years ago. So pricing is really important, and how you build up that price. So again, a lot of business owners just look at, okay, it's going to cost me about, I don't know, $100 to deliver this service. I'll charge $100. But you've got to be thinking about what's the profit that you're going to make. If you're not building in a profit into your pricing, you'll just constantly be scrambling. So if you're not actually doing that calculation and you don't know what your profit is, you could be undercharging, and actually every time you're getting a new customer on board, it's costing you money, which you don't want to happen. So yeah, pricing is a huge one. And it's one of those areas that can be really awkward. People don't want to talk about pricing. It feels yucky. You don't want to, put your prices up. But if you're good at what you do, you're providing a valuable service to your clients, they will want to pay you what you're worth. And sometimes if you're charging too low a price, it actually puts the perception out there that you're not that great. If you're cheaper than everyone else in the market, clients start to think, oh, okay, well, they can't be that good. If they're so much cheaper, there has to be something wrong with it. So,
Other
yeah,
than
I
their
think,
self-worth.
yeah, exactly. But yeah, pricing, I think, is a big one. Um, and as you know, the other one is around just the owner's capacity and time, particularly if the owner's still doing a lot of the delivery work. So planning for resourcing to support that is a big one. When we start out in business, it's particularly if you're a service business, you are doing all of it as the owner. You have to do the sales, the marketing, the operational side, the client delivery work. I've been there. I'm sure you've been there, Kerrie.
Yep, we all start there.
Yes. But at some point it grows too big for you, or you just can't grow any further if it's you doing everything. And that causes a lot of stress and headaches. And I think with resourcing, uh, it's finding that right point to bring on the resources, because you don't want to do it too early and you don't have enough work for that person to do and you can't quite afford it. But you don't want to do it too late where things are just complete chaos and you're just having to fight fires and you don't have the time to actually get someone up to speed and make sure that they're efficient and effective in the business. You would have a lot of expertise in this area with what you do in helping businesses to improve their processes. But it's often a question of, yeah, when should I hire, and whether it's permanent or a contracting role. But I think there's lots of options out there, to start with these fractional roles or freelancing roles to even test out what works and without having to commit to a full-time employee and the costs behind that too.
Absolutely. And I think it's great that the whole fractional space has opened up for this
Yeah.
particular reason. It's going to give the business owners that we're talking to at this stage of their business access to expertise that they would never really have access to.
Yeah.
So it's really helpful. So a lot of our listeners do run service-based businesses, obviously with small teams, somewhere around 5 to 50. In those businesses, where do you see the biggest financial blind spots, and what are the founders often carrying mentally or emotional because the numbers aren't clear?
Yeah. I mean, I get, apart from the pricing that I talked about, which I do feel is a constant one, particularly in service businesses, it's because the service can be customized, it can be really difficult to work out what the pricing needs to be. So that's definitely one area. But I think the other area is really how you think about profit overall. Um, Not many businesses are thinking about that upfront. And profit after you've also paid yourself as the owner of the business. So often business owners will think, well, if the business isn't making profit, I won't really pay myself anything, or just if there's money in the account, I might take something out of it. But I think, that the business owner is carrying all the responsibility, all the stress, all the risk, and then not paying themselves properly. So I think that's an area that a lot of business owners don't really, not that they don't think about it, but they're not planning for it properly to be able to pay themselves and slowly increase their wage over time. In terms of what a business owner, takes on, and that sort of emotional stress behind it, I mean, finance is one of the biggest areas that causes stress for business owners. And
Everywhere. Doesn't
yeah,
matter whether, yeah, business, home, everywhere.
yes, 100%. So, if you want to get rid of that, you really need to find the right strategies and the right structure so you can stop feeling a lot of that stress. I mean, that's what I love about the job is like, yes, we're getting financial strategies, but it's that moment, even sometimes when you're talking to a client and, they finally decided to take on the service, and it's like their shoulders drop because they're like, oh, thank God someone else is going to help me to deal with this now. It's not all on my shoulders. Like we take on so much ourselves as business owners. So even just having someone that can help guide you, to talk to vent to, it's really helpful. So yeah, I just avoiding it and dealing with that yourself for so long really can impact a business owner's mental health.
Absolutely. And I love that you mentioned that relief in the shoulder drop, because that's our favorite part too.
Yeah,
You
yeah,
know, we come in and I always think, the cat in the meme where its hair's all up like this, and, like it's trying to get through life just on coffee. And I'm like, they're the kind of business owners that we kind of run into when we go in. And quite often after a while, they actually look not like that anymore, which is
yeah.
nice.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean that's it, right? Like when people ask, well, what's the point of your business, or what are you trying to achieve? And yes, we're trying to help business owners make more profit and make more money, but I want, the business owner that can take more holidays this year, or the business owner that can actually take a holiday after they haven't for the last 5 years. That if the business owner is able to do that, that's a huge goal, and that is, we have succeeded if we've helped them to do that. So a lot of what we're doing to be able to set them up to have financial success is really to support the lifestyle that they want and reduce that stress on the business owner, because all of that business stress will filter into their personal life if they're having financial stress. So yeah, we are
Really.
maybe
Like,
not CFOs, we're really stress relievers.
yeah, that's
Yeah.
right. We're ops stress relievers.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
But it's funny because, they get into business because they want that lifestyle.
Yeah,
And then quite often they've built themselves a prison.
yeah. It's a complete opposite. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's nice to hear that you also have that focus and you bring that relief to business owners, because I think that ultimately is actually worth way more than everything else. Like everything else is really important, but if you can't provide relief to someone who is in that stressful state, then, it's not as valuable as what we currently are doing, right? So we're
Yeah.
doing that, we're bringing that relief, which means that they can actually step back and do what they need and where
Yeah.
they should be, right?
Exactly. And it's, it's why often when we're working with a new client, we'll talk to them about their business goals, but some of their personal goals, because ultimately, as you say, people start a business to gain freedom and lifestyle. And if that's not happening and it's actually making things worse, no matter how big your business gets, it's not worth it. And so, for some people, they will talk to them initially, they'll say, oh, my goal is to get to a $10 million business. And then when you unpick it, it's actually things in their lifestyle that they want. They want to support their kids' private school education. They want to be able to take some more holidays. And we work out, okay, $5 million might get you there with better profitability rather than trying to get to 10 and more stress and, do it in a way that's chaotic and unprofitable. So, yeah, that's why the revenue goal is important, but it has to be in context of everything else, because just chasing revenue to get a bigger business isn't necessarily success for a lot of people.
Perfect example for when they're just chasing revenue, thinking that the revenue will solve their problem.
Yeah.
And will give them what they want. But as we both talk about, revenue without profit doesn't mean shit.
Yeah, exactly. And I can imagine, what you do is like helping to free up the time, because the finances are one thing, but a business owner's time and capacity is huge. If they don't have time to take a holiday or spend time with their family, that's an issue too. So I feel like it's the money and time, if we can get that back for the business owner, actually helps support their lifestyle overall. They really need both.
Yeah, they do, absolutely. And, we talk a lot on this podcast about nervous system safety and sustainable leadership. So from what you see, what actually changes for leaders when they understand their numbers instead of avoiding them? And how does financial clarity affect decision-making, stress levels and leadership presence?
Yeah, I mean, it is that reduction in stress, but I also see it in how they lead in their business. So if they've got team members, and they, as a leader are not across their numbers, you're just reacting to everything. So a problem happens, we have to completely change what we're doing, stop doing that work on this. Someone, it's just constant firefighting. And as an employee under a leader like that, that's draining and it's confusing. And I've worked for leaders like that in corporate, and you just feel it's frustrating. You work on some piece of work and then they'll suddenly say, scrap that, start again, we're doing this now. It's not leadership, it's just constant firefighting. And so them having clarity on their numbers and more visibility on what's to come, they're much more focused, and then they can communicate much more clearly to their team members. So the team know what they're focusing on. It doesn't change every second week. They know, this is what we're focusing on. We know what to do if something goes wrong. I just feel it creates a calmness across the entire business. So yes, for them, they're getting the stress relief, but I feel like it's stress relief for the team too, because they have much more clarity and focus in what they need to execute on.
Yeah, I find what you're talking about is really important. And the other layer to that we've seen is that when there is that cash stress, the team members actually, they don't view them as team members anymore. They view them as a dollar value. So they're not, like you said, they're not leading from the right space. And why they chop and change a lot is because, often it's, oh, well, they're costing me this much an hour. They should be able to get more done in that time frame, because they're thinking of, well, if I was doing it, I'd get it this much done.
Yeah.
Right? Obviously different thing. And then they start to consider, well, maybe I should just get rid of them and do it myself. There's that, I'll just take it back. It'll be give it away and then take it back because of that financial stress and concern of being able to pay them at the end of the month or whenever it is.
Yeah, that's it.
So,
or there's a business owner will often try to prevent the team from seeing a lot of that stuff, and it isn't necessarily something you talk with your team members, but you'll just see them start to get a bit more short with them and snappy, and they can tell that there's stress in the business even if you're not sort of sharing that, and then not knowing can kind of make it worse because they think it's something they're doing, or I just see that spiraling so much. So
it just takes them out of that, like I said, that calm where they can actually live properly.
Yeah.
Because they're just freaking out about cash.
Yeah. 100%.
Yeah. So for someone listening who feels behind or intimidated but knows avoidance isn't helping, where would you want them to start? Is there one number, report or habit that gives them the biggest clarity for effort in return?
Yeah. I mean, I think the first thing is, if you haven't started, you're not looking at it and you feel like it's already out of control, you don't feel bad about that. There's always a solution. So no shame. And what I talk to business owners about is your financials are actually just data in your business. It does create so much emotional tension for us, but at the end of the day, it's just information, and it's not good, bad. It just is information to tell us what we need to do next. And if you kind of take that step back and think about it, so if you haven't looked for your numbers for a while and you're ready to, then it's just going to give you information on what you need to do. So that's step number one. Just take the emotion out of it. It's just data. It's not that big a deal. The two things I would suggest is start setting up just time in your diary to do a weekly review of your numbers. We kind of recommend a 30 minutes a week, but even if you started with like 10, whatever you can fit in, but just do it on a weekly basis. Because even if you're not really sure where to start, doing it regularly, you'll start to see some patterns. And if of the numbers to look at, if you're going to look at nothing else in your business, look at these three things: your revenue, and on a monthly basis, so you can start to see the trends that are happening, your profit that you're making from that revenue. So revenue will tell you if your business is growing, but profit will tell you if it's going to continue growing for the long term. And then the last one is your cash, and that will tell you if you are able to pay your bills in the next few weeks. So that way you're kind of looking at the three key metrics that will see, is your business growing? Will it survive for the longer term? And will it survive in the short term to pay your bills next week? So if nothing else, look at those three metrics on a weekly basis. And then once you get familiar with that, you can expand from there.
Perfect. And what kind of mindset shift would you really love to see business owners make when it comes to money and leadership?
I think it is that where money is not a taboo thing. It's just data. And you can't compare where your business is at with someone else. The person saying that they're earning $1 million online and you're not, you don't know the background. You don't know where they've come from. You don't know what profit they're making from all of that. So don't compare. Everyone's at different stages. And even if you have a month that's not as good as your other months. Again, it's just data. It just tells you something needs to be done differently, or there's timing issues, or so just take it as it's data and what do you need to do about it. So remove the emotion from it. It's just information, and it's good to know because then you can make a decision. I think that mindset shift is really important for business owners, rather than feel that a bad month is a reflection on them personally or their capability or the business as a whole. It's
It could
not.
be the season, right? Because
Could be
sometimes December
anything.
and January, quite often in a
100%.
lot of businesses,
Yep.
dip. But
Could
if you
be.
don't look at them on a regular
Yep.
basis, you won't see that pattern.
Yeah. And the other thing that, I do find some frustration from business owners that they've found something that's worked for a period of time. They build their business up. So they think, I'll keep doing that because that's been successful. And then suddenly they're stuck and they're thinking, well, but I've been doing this the whole time and it's worked for me. Why is it not working now? But, we always say what got you here won't get you there. At each stage of business, you've got to rethink and do things differently. So it's not your fault. It's just at each stage of growth, there's different challenges. There's different things that you need to be thinking about. So you do need to change your approach over time. So again, it's not you. It's just as the business evolves, the market, external conditions, team capability, all what your clients are doing, all kinds of things can impact it. Yeah, don't take it personally.
That's right. It's just data. I
Just
love it. And for me, who loves pattern recognition, data is amazing. It's so much
yeah,
fun.
yeah.
So if you look at it long enough, you'll start to see patterns in that. And for me, that's the really fun part. Whether they're good or bad patterns, it's still really fun.
Yeah. Can build out some nice graphs and charts
Yeah.
and dashboards to
Oh,
help you.
man,
Yeah.
I hated dashboards in corporate, but now I love a nice dashboard. So
Love a
pretty.
good dashboard. Yeah.
Love a good dashboard. So how do you think businesses would change if numbers were seen as support and not judgment?
I really think that if businesses start to get on top of this, we see less failure from those businesses in early stages. I don't have the stats in front of me, but you'll be aware too, Kerrie, there's so many businesses fail in, more than half businesses fail in the first 2 or 3 years. And most of the time it's due to cash flow issues. And it's not necessarily the business owner's, ability or that the business idea is bad. It's that they don't have an understanding and they're not planning ahead. And I feel like so much of that can be avoided. So even if you get to learn the basics and just start doing that weekly review, I feel like there's so many more businesses that could survive. And we really want more money in the hands of small business owners that are doing great things, right? But
Yes.
the more that we have those businesses succeeding, creating a greater impact in the world, coming out of the passion of the business owner and not just, the money hungry corporates, that can only be
Escape from.
better. Yeah, it can only be better to have more competition in that space. So Yeah, I would love to see that. That's my vision for the future once we all start to really understand our numbers.
Yes, I'd love to see that too. That's my thing too. I'd rather see more small businesses make it longer
Yeah,
and, kind of really basically give corporate a run for their money, but give everyone else the actual choice, not the
yeah,
perceived choice, you know.
yeah,
So I think it's really important and, I'm a big fan of helping the underdog, so that's why I like helping small businesses. So, and obviously why I don't fit in corporate either. So, Sarah, I wanted to thank you. This has been such a grounding conversation, and I really take away from this that it's clarity and it isn't about being good at numbers, it's about taking responsibility for the business you're leading. So, so I wanted to thank you for being on today.
Thank you for having me on. It's a privilege to be on the podcast, and I know you're very aligned in your thinking and how we help small businesses. So, yeah, appreciate the opportunity to talk about what I do, and hopefully it's helps some business owners out there.
Excellent. So, for anyone listening, this isn't about pushing harder or becoming a finance expert overnight. It's about choosing visibility so you can lead and live with more calm. And Sarah, it's been amazing. You've brought such a human, practical perspective to the topic, and so many people quietly struggle with. And if this episode resonated, share it with someone who avoids their numbers, not because they're careless, but because they've been carrying too much alone. So this is the business rebellion, and this is what it sounds like to do business differently.